सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
In this edition of Global Print, dear viewer, I'm going to talk to you about the G20. Now, you would ask, and I would definitely agree, what else is there to talk about these days, especially in the capital city of Delhi, where I live? There's only one word on the lips of people, and that's G20. Now, that's not just because the city has been given 3 days off, and until all the leaders leave on the 11th of September, but also because the city has been really beautified. Delhi is a historical city. It's such a lovely city. It's full of old monuments. But in these last few days, in the last couple of weeks, I cannot tell you, dear viewer, the manner in which the streets of the city, at least the main avenues, have been swept. Barely a leaf drops and there's somebody there to come and sweep it off. And you've got hundreds and thousands of pots have been placed. Nurseries have been overnight have sort of sprung flowers that and flowering bushes. These have been sort of placed all along these main avenues and streets. It's just looking incredible, and I just hope that after this global jamboree gets over and everybody returns home, I just hope that the city continues to look as beautiful and as clean. Although I think, I'm already doubting that, because a lot of the plants that, for example, have newly been sort of placed are already wilting, because guess what? Nobody's there to water them. But be that as it may, this is a global event, and India is justifiably proud that it is hosting the event, no matter that Russia's Vladimir Putin and China's Xi Jinping are not attending. Putin is sending his very astute and sophisticated diplomat, the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, and Xi Jinping is sending his premier, Li Qiang. Of course, it's not the same for neither of these two leaders to not be present, and their absence will be felt, especially on the Putin front, because I think India is the one country in the world that would have welcomed him. Prime Minister Modi would have embraced him, no matter that the Western world continues to treat him like a pariah since the invasion of Ukraine last year. And like I've said before many times on this channel and my columns on The Print, that there was absolutely no need for Putin to go and invade Ukraine. That kind of aggression was completely unnecessary. Enough has happened in the last year and a half. Thousands of people have been unnecessarily killed. And now with the Americans fighting the war to the last Ukrainian, it's clear that the US and Russia should sit down and talk. And perhaps Joe Biden and Putin could have used the G20 forum to exchange notes, or to talk about talks. But anyway, Putin is not coming, and it's clear that the Western world would not have wanted to meet him at all. In fact, there was there was a lot of tension in Delhi regarding that. There was going to be a photo opportunity of the leaders, where to seat Putin around the Oval table. Anyway, that's all done. He's not coming. Similarly, Xi Jinping, he's not coming either. Now, the first point that I'd like to make in this video column is, does this mean that the G20, which will not have either Putin or Xi, does this mean that this forum becomes a toothless summit? And the answer to that is absolutely not. I think it is Russia and China's loss that their leaders are not showing up for the G20, because there's a lot of issues that will be discussed, including the financial situation around the world since COVID, the debt restructuring that a lot of countries in the global south talk about, whether it's India or in Africa and the poorer parts of Asia. And let me just quickly say here as an aside that India has invited 9 countries like Egypt, UAE, Bangladesh to the G20 forum as observers. and basically to make the forum much more representative, that it should not be just an exclusive club of the world's richest economies, but that the global south must also have a say in how to shape the world in the coming years. So that's the first, which is that the conversation will go on, that despite Putin and Xi Jinping's absence, there will be talk about the problems that the global south is facing. The second point that I'd like to make here is that Prime Minister Modi has leveraged the G20 over the past year when India has been president to shore up his influence, not just inside India, and he's definitely being seen as a leader who can deliver. And you just speak to people around you here in the city, and everybody says that first of all, people don't like the fact that there is criticism of the amount of money that has been spent to prettify the city. And people are saying that, when people come to your house and guests come to your house, don't you shine up your house? So, and Modi is the recipient of that appreciation on the part of the people. So there is no question Prime Minister Modi has leveraged the G20 presidency of the past year to shore up his own reputation, his image. Not that needed shoring up, because he clearly remains the most popular political leader in India by far. But he has also shown that he's not just the leader of the developing world, that by rubbing shoulders with the world's richest leaders, most powerful nations, and Joe Biden, for example, the US president, is here for a one-day bilateral on the eve of the G20, that Modi is showing that he is really one of the big boys. So that's the big transformation that has taken place in India, that Modi has used foreign policy, much like a lot of other prime ministers have done, especially Indira Gandhi. And that comparison between Modi and Indira Gandhi has been made more than once in the past. So Modi definitely following in the footsteps of Indira Gandhi, which is to shore up his influence, his reputation abroad as one of the big players, and showcasing India's strength as a result. The third point I'd like to make here, dear viewer, is that it's very interesting the manner in which the US President Joe Biden has thrown in his lot with Modi. Now, traditionally, if you look at the way the Democratic Party functions in the US, it's a left of center party. Its ideological leanings are left of center, which means that it's usually very critical of center right or right wing governments in India. And human rights issues come up a lot. With this government, whether it's the revocation of Article 370, whether it's the CAA, whether it's a lot of other issues in domestic politics, the lynching of Muslims, for example, the treatment of minorities. But Joe Biden has held his tongue a lot of those times. 4 years ago, when Article 370 was revoked in Jammu and Kashmir, at the time, one of his very prominent Democrat Party leaders, Pramila Jayapal, a woman of Indian origin, was very critical of what had happened in India. And in fact, she did not even participate in a meeting that Mr. Jaishankar had held when he had gone to Washington, D.C. that year, 2018. But so much water has flowed down both the Potomac as well as the Yamuna rivers. And that clearly means that Biden has understood that America's lot must be tied up with India. So he's not just not going to the East Asia Summit to the chagrin of a lot of the ASEAN states, but he's also coming to India one day earlier in order to send the message worldwide that the Americans have thrown their lot in with Narendra Modi and with India, notwithstanding all the other issues and all the other problems that the US may have with India, whether it's on the trade front, whether it's on the human rights front, or just the identity politics or the Hindutva politics that stares you in the face, and that can be quite uncomfortable at times. But Joe Biden has decided that Modi is the man of the hour, or at least a big leader in our part of the world. Now, you would ask yourself why. And the answer is very simple. As China becomes more and more powerful and snaps at the heels of America, and that's what rising powers do. They want to displace you. They want to be world number one. The Americans have realized that they are hurt, that they are wounded with their many excursions abroad, most recently in Afghanistan, where they were there for 20 years and spent more than $1 trillion and lost, of course, several hundred men. Now, the Americans want India, although it's a much smaller economy, 1/5 the size of China, they want India to help contain China. And so this alliance or this partnership between India and the US is very clear to see. It's very evident. And one of the main reasons for that is the common antipathy towards China. As far as India is concerned, of course, the Chinese have been sitting on the line of actual control for the past 3 years, and nobody really understands why they are here. So India and the US joining hands to try and contain China. And this is something that is coming together at the G20 and something that's very apparent at the G20. The last point that I'd like to make in this video, dear viewer, is that less and less as India's proximity to the US grows, less and less does the Indian establishment want to forge a middle path in its foreign policy, walk that narrow fine line between the two big powers, Russia and the US. Over the last year and a half, we've seen how India has taken full advantage of the war in Ukraine when oil prices crashed and the Russians sold these very low prices of oil to India, despite Western displeasure over India was being seen as busting the sanctions that the Western world had imposed on Russia. But I think India ignored the displeasure of this Western world, saying that it was not the UN that had imposed these sanctions. And so over the last year and a half, as India has taken advantage of these very low prices of energy, of oil especially, and in June this year, Russian energy comprised about 40 to 42% of its import energy basket. India depends hugely on imported energy to grind the wheels of its economy. So it's got a lot of advantage of these cheap oil prices. But it's very clear to see that India is less and less interested in trying to forge or trying to balance its relationship with Russia on the one hand and the US on the other. Now, it's clear that the Americans are also seeking to invest in India, and I think the Indians realize that their proximity to the Russians will make it more difficult for the Americans to do that. So it seems as if the Indian establishment, which was walking this fine line this last year and a half, has sort of taken a decision that it will just do the bare minimum in the Russia relationship and come and forge a much closer partnership with the US. Now, of course, you can argue on both sides of the debate, but I would just say here that India's foreign policy, known to be walking this middle path, is going to be hurt by the fact that if it abandons the relationship with Russia. Because there are times in the past when the Russians have bailed you out and the former Soviets have bailed India out on many an occasion. But be that as it may, I think the India-US partnership is also the need of the hour, a very, very important partnership for India and the US to come so closely together. I'm not saying that they are allies because that has a different connotation, but the fact that they are friends and partners in need is quite significant and quite apparent, and none more so than the decision for India and the US to send a joint consignment of aid to Ukraine. Now that, of course, is a direct message to Russia. So we will be following the G20 summit at ThePrint over the next few days. So please do continue to watch videos by my colleagues and also read all the stories that appear on the website. And I will see you very soon next week. Thank you so much for watching.